Welcome to The Big Word with Ngullie, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, Ngullie. Right after Hornbill TV telecast a news report showing the response of Nagaland Staff Selection Board examinees, some observers wondered about the level of our academic culture and social education. The context was that the current system of education, coupled with complex socio-political environments, might be awfully inadequate in preparing our students to navigate their way through life. We do not read newspapers or books. We watch movies but not TV news, meaning most people are literate but not educated. Joining me in the studio today is Dr. Temsurenla Ozukum, head of the English faculty at ICFAI University, Nagaland. She is said to have been instrumental in introducing paper literature from the northeast of India in MA English program. She will be exploring the interaction between academics and literary aptitudes and between being literate and being well informed. Welcome to our show, Aaron. How are you feeling now?
I'm doing quite okay, thank you.
Don't be nervous because this is going to be a very fun interaction. Did I get your name right?
Yeah, it will do.
Temsurenla. What does it mean?
Temsurenla, when you say Aaron,
Aaron,
it
okay.
means prosperity.
Prosperity.
So Temsurenla can be to prosper in the right way, in a very fitful manner.
In a fitful manner.
Mm.
Wow, because I think there have been a couple of times that I have had guests over and I mispronounced their name. You don't know the misery that I went through after mispronouncing their names. So anyhow, thank you so much. How did you find this place? I thought you didn't know our place here, Hornbill TV.
Actually, I stay in Chumu, so I have been in Chumu for quite some time, so this place is quite familiar.
So it is very familiar.
Yes.
I thought you might have lost your way somewhere out there. Somebody called me at a doctor's today and said, hey, your guest is already here, and I was wondering because I thought you might be from Dimapur actually.
All right.
So we're going to talk about a topic, and that is actually the reading habits and the level of literary curiosity that our students have. Did you see the Hornbill report on the NSSB examinees? What was your feeling when we asked them who was the governor of Nagaland? They did not know. When we asked them what NSSB stood for, they did not know. What did you think about it? So
on Friday?
Yes. What did
So,
you think about that?
if I put myself in the shoes of the people who were asked that question, considering the age group that they must belong to, I felt that it was some sort of a caught in the deer in the headlight moment for them.
I know.
Yeah. So when you are put in a spot, sometimes you tend to forget. Your mind just blanks out. So for some of them, it might have been that, but at the same time, I think it is also a reflection of how our society is going.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And how though everyone strives, be it because of parental pressures or be it because one wants to have a government job. So I think it is also to do with that pressure and you know, just following the trend or going along with the trend. So
so what you're saying is actually thought that these people, they have degrees but they are not really intellectually prepared to face the examinations they were giving. Was
I
that
think
your
some
thought?
responses were from people who might have prepared for the exam, while for some I felt that it might be because they just wanted to give it a try, or maybe their parents, as we all know how all our parents are, might have pressured them into sitting for the exam and they were not quite ready for it.
Right.
That's the thought that I got when I watched that.
Okay, how long have you been, if I may ask, how long have you been in the teaching profession?
I have completed 8 years.
8 years.
Yes.
That's like a thousand of years for me. 8 years. So, which means you are actually very familiar with the mindsets of students when it comes to learning from what they are being taught from books and learning from what the society is teaching them. So, do you think, as someone who is a master of literature, do you think that our students are being given ample opportunity to read beyond what they are being given in the colleges and schools?
That is an interesting question. So every year, before we start our academic session, I always have this thought about maybe the quality of students that will come into our university, especially pursuing masters in English. So one of the first questions that I ask my students in the introductory class is whether they read or not. A lot of them will respond in the affirmative.
I see.
Because they like reading, so they are there pursuing masters in English. At the same time, I think many of them read just to pass the exam. Reading as a culture is, I think, on the decline.
Right.
If I may add. And reading, we know, is something that should be cultivated from the elementary level. But the way that the society is going, or our educational system is going towards, is how reading is seen as a chore.
Right.
Is seen as a chore, and students usually read for as study reading, just to pass an exam, or just what is there in the book. So that critical reading is missing. This is what I feel, as well as analytical reading, which enhances someone's intelligence or someone's cognitive abilities is missing. But I'm not discounting the students who come with eagerness to pursue literature in masters in English, because the way that we see them when they first enter the university, and the time and when they are in their fourth semester and about to graduate, we can see the changes that are there in the students.
I don't know if you know the former director of the Morong Express, Akam Longshari.
Yes, yes.
I remember him telling me many years ago while we were going home after a program. He said, you know, Al, the reason why we don't have Nagas, we don't like books. We have a lot of people who have degrees and diplomas, but we don't have the habit of reading. It could be reading newspapers, magazines, anything outside the school and college is something that you do not really take interest in. And Mr. Longshari told me this. The reason why we don't read books is because our outlook is also superficial.
That's an interesting take.
Yeah, yes. and I still remember it to this day. And it is very true. If you're a scientist, you're going to go deep into research, into studies of other people, other scientists, because your outlook is very deep. But if your outlook is very shallow, then it means you're going to like only shallow things, shallow literature, you know. So based on that, I want to ask you this question. Over the past 8 years that you have been teaching, have you ever felt that people who graduated from your class have come to a point where you have seen changes in their personality that gave you an idea that, hey, these people have gone beyond the books they read in college. Now they're reading books, or they're watching news, or keeping updated with the current times. Have you ever felt that? Did you see that?
Of course, why not? Why not?
Go ahead, tell me, explain.
So we have brilliant students also who are very creative. We have students who are singers, songwriters, and I don't know if I should be saying this, but I feel that their songwriting also gets refined. That's from the perspective of a teacher.
Yes.
So I feel that sometimes their songwriting also gets refined, and then we also have all those budding poets who come, who love writing poetry, and their skills or their writing abilities also gets better, in my opinion. Not to say that it is us who have made them better, but it is their interest. It is their interest, and it is the effort that they put in to brush up on their that gift that they have, which later on turns into a really good, maybe even a way of making their livelihood also.
True, Aaron, that is so true. Who is your favorite student? Just in case others won't get jealous.
For me,
literature?
all of my students I consider as my kids. So I cannot think of anyone whom I would consider as a favorite student.
Yeah. That inspired them to seek more knowledge, you know.
Okay, okay.
So coming to Nagaland, and from your experience as a lecturer at ICFAI, and
Okay.
over the past 8 years, do you think that the culture of reading was actually hindered by the colleges and schools? Do you think our system is actually the one blocking?
I think the system that we have been following for over the years, I think that can be considered to be a cause for the lack of interest that students show
Yes.
in reading as a hobby or as part of their interest.
Go on, go on. Don't you think that this system is actually the reason why our youths don't read beyond anything that is given in the college, and once they leave, they go for competitive examinations and they don't really perform well? So where's the fault in this as a teacher? Where do you think it is?
Okay, so when we are talking about learning, because reading is one of the skills that we are introduced to from our primary level of education. And when one cultivates very good reading habits, then it translates into writing. Because when you are a good, when you have become a good reader, then it actually helps you, one, to increase your vocabulary.
Right.
Then secondly, it also makes you very imaginative,
Right.
makes you create a world of imagination also. Then at the same time, we can also say that reading, it can also enhance someone's cognitive abilities, then at the same time make someone able to assess situations. Then at the same time, when we look at the job prospects or the job market or in industries, communication skills or soft skills are very important. I'm sure all of us are born with some skills, but a reader, someone who reads and then someone who tries to imbibe what one is reading in the manner in which one communicates with others, how one presents themselves, have better chances of doing better at interviews or you know, interacting with people, which will give them a better chance at winning than the others who do not learn because unfortunately they do not read. So reading, I think, is a good way of developing not only one's intellect, but at the same time it can also enhance one's personality also.
True.
To be able to negotiate through different kind of situations because you have learned how the characters that you read about do it. And then, you know, I'm interested in, I usually I'm interested in this detective fiction, that kind that Agatha Christie, right, whodunit, that genre. So when you first read one, you are lost. You do not understand who is the murderer. But as you read more about the same type of pattern, then your mind, you know, gets trained to understand certain situations, to look for clues in the way it is presented, the characters, the events that unfold, and you actually come towards the end, you actually can you know, sometimes pinpoint who the murderer is. So
it's
you know, so yes, it's a pattern that you will learn only when you read more about it.
A lot of studies in neuroscience have found that people who read a lot of books, and I'm not saying college books or school textbook, okay? People who read books are likely to have to develop a higher level of empathy.
I would agree with that.
They are kinder.
Yes.
They are more sophisticated in their speech and the way they treat others. And I'm not saying that people, if you have only degrees, it doesn't mean that you are educated to that level. But what I'm saying is, whether you are not, you have degrees, if you are someone who reads a lot of books, there are higher chances that you will have a much higher emotional intelligence. That is, you know how to deal with people, how to talk to them, how to treat, and you're good in chatting and having good conversations.
I agree
so
with
higher
that.
level of empathy. What is your form content for the students when it comes to reading? What do you encourage them to read?
Apart from the topics, this is something that I try to do with almost all my classes. So apart from the topics that are prescribed in that paper for that semester, what I try to do is give them a list of books which is outside the which are not part of the syllabus. But for example, if I am taking a paper on Indian writing in English, there is only a select topic that is part of the syllabus which we need to teach in the class.
Right.
But I want them to know more about Indian writing in English apart from what is prescribed in the text, in the paper. So what I try to do is create a list of topics, books, different genres of books, be it drama, be it collection of poetry or short stories or novels by different well-known Indian writers, and I give them to the list to the students so that I either give them selected topics for the students or I make them choose.
Excuse me. This is not part of their curriculum.
Yeah.
This is different.
Yeah, this
okay,
is
please
different.
Continue, sorry.
This is for them to have a better idea about, you know, the vast genre. Since I'm using the example of Indian writing in English, so for them to have a better idea of other Indian writers whom we are not discussing in the class. So I give them, I give it as seminar topics. So they have to read the books and then make presentations so that their other classmates will also understand what their friend is talking about.
Right.
And in that way, I believe their knowledge bank about Indian writing in English will also increase. So if it is another paper to do with, like I said, I am passionate about literature that comes from this region. So if it is also to do with Northeast writers, that is also something that I do. So as a teacher, I believe that that will help them students. From the perspective of the students, I can't say, but as a teacher, I believe that is another way of enhancing the knowledge that the students have about a particular subject that they are
and
reading.
interpret the information they receive from those books and translate them into action later on in the future. Right?
Yes.
Is that what you mean?
Yes. And sometimes these books, it triggers their interest, research interest also. And I have had former students who have, you know, being inspired by these kind of books for their research topics as well. So that is very encouraging to hear as a teacher when students say that a book that you have given as a, you know, as a part of their assignment or as part of their assessment has helped triggered their mind and has helped them develop an interest to pursue research in that topic. So that's there.
I think later on in the future, if ICFAI University happens to organize a program that will talk about literary curiosity and literary bent of mind in people who read books, then I think Hornbill TV can collaborate, right?
Surely. We will keep that in mind.
It will be fun.
We will hold on to that.
No, I mean, this is seriously, we can just sit together.
Yeah, we can do that.
Bookstores in Glen that unfortunately are losing a lot of sales.
Very true.
For example, I think the Morong Express has reported on this, Nagaland Post, they've reported on this, that the number of people who read books in Nagaland, they are decreasing. A lot of them. And I think it, in some way, the NSSB examination just recently,
yes,
the way things ran is a reflection that I think we Naga people, we need to read a little bit more. And when I say reading, it's not just about books. It's being updated yourself with current movements in the society, or even getting communication skills, learning how to interact with people in society. That's reading. It means observing and absorbing. I think the number of bookstalls closing and the lower level of sales that they are making says that we are not reading. So you mentioned earlier about how, of course, the schools and colleges are also a hindrance because they are stuck to a certain curriculum.
If I may just interject there, I think the system is changing a little bit.
Okay.
We are
Now, in what way?
moving away from that, where we now have the curriculum which emphasizes on extracurricular activities also,
I
and
see.
practical aspect of learning. So students are made to have discussions in the classroom based on a book that is prescribed to them, even at maybe the high school level. So I think that will also give them confidence to interact with other people. So I think the trend is changing a little bit. So and it is very encouraging. So very different from how I was as a student and how we were taught as a student. But so it is encouraging to see the trend where emphasis is put on the practical aspect of learning also, rather than just the theoretical and the bookish knowledge, where a teacher comes into the classroom and then gives a lecture for maybe 40 minutes, 45 minutes, or dictate notes for maybe 40 minutes without really letting the students understand or enjoy, you know, the process of learning. So, but now I think things have shifted a little bit. So, yeah,
that's interesting. How was your classroom environment those days?
Very silent. Students will not speak up, and I was also one of those students who will not say anything unless my name is called or the teacher points at me. So that is the environment in which I grew up.
I see.
And I think that is something that continues to plague our classrooms even today.
Mostly.
But like I said, there is also this positive change when there are more interactions going on in the class. So
so if you like when you say that there are changes happening and somehow it is different from the way students were taught those days and they are being taught nowadays. So when you said there is a level of change here, do you mean that the curriculum is being shaped to fit the student, or is the curriculum being shaped to fit the society for the students later? Which way is it?
It can go both ways. Sometimes we see the curriculum, like you mentioned, which is shaped and then which is prepared to fit the needs of the students. And looking at the trend now, I don't know if this is the right way to put it, but in today's world, the attention span of people have become lesser.
60 seconds.
Very less, right? So maybe, I don't know if I'm right in saying this, but the curriculum is also shaped according to the changing times. So students sometimes would prefer to learn something through visual means more than through reading, because that is the way it is explained is brief, and there are all those attractions which come with the visual mode of learning. So they would rather read, they would rather watch something and learn something more than reading a book or reading a text or something. So I think that is also to do with the attention span that we have today. So
I read the research earlier that a person can actually make up your education, your upbringing, and even a little bit of your personality in the first 7 words you speak. So in that first 7 words that comes out of your mouth, you have either you can impress that person, or that person won't be impressed by you. So what we have here is a very short time span for you to actually make an impact on someone, especially if you're looking for, let's say, a job. If, let's say, your class English literature students, they graduate from here, do you think, because some of them will not go into teaching?
Yes.
So do you think they're ready for the big world out there?
Some of them, definitely.
So which means the way that you're giving the answer, literature or reading, won't be enough.
We can't force people to read.
That is true.
We can't force people to read. So I think that is also a very difficult question to answer, whether reading is the solution to all of people's maybe future or
Now, I'm asking this question. The reason is that during the recent NSSB examination, the examinees were asked, for example, who is the governor of Nagaland?
Yes.
And I am not saying that, and I don't think if someone would ask me that, I don't think I would know that too. We wouldn't know everyone's title or positions in the government. I give you that.
Yes,
But like I said, for me, I read like 3-4 newspapers a day. I watch like news channels and update myself. So at least the governor of Nagaland or the chief minister of Nagaland, I know to that point. So what I'm trying to point out here is that if you don't know someone who is the most prominent person in your state, then it means you are not even reading the newspaper, forget novels, right?
Yes, yes. They have to read. But coming to the question about, I just wanted to respond to your that view that you have about students not knowing the name of the governor of Nagaland. If we look at it from one perspective, it may be also to do with the abundance of information that is available at the push of a button.
Right.
So in our times, and you know, sounding very old when I say in our times and in the present time. So in our time, we did not have access to a lot of information. If we want, we either have to go to the library to find information. But now everything is there at the push of a button. So I think that it's also making people, you know, so dependent on information that you can access from anywhere, anytime, rather than storing those information in your head. That is what I feel.
Yeah, that is true. I think I'll agree with what you said in regard to being pummeled with information, with a lot of information from the internet, from TV, from newspapers and magazines. So yes, that is also true. Thinking of it now, we can't really be harsh on the NSSB candidates. So that's a lot of information they have to absorb. So in that way, maybe I think they might have been caught off guard in that sense. But still, yet again, for me, I still think that those are very basic information.
Yes, yes.
I think
I agree.
Even your teacher would have told you those days, you know, even if you don't know science or mathematics, at least know the chief minister of Nagaland.
Yes, yes.
You know, so that was the premise for my question. So this is the question that I always wanted to ask you about. Have you ever felt that you were responsible, let's say, if your students were not equipped enough, that when they left the classroom, they failed, and it was your responsibility? It's not just passing or not getting the degree. It's about being equipped, like I say, with different kinds of knowledge and information and various skills like communication skills, interview skills. So have you ever thought?
Teaching is a huge responsibility. So we are talking about or handling the future of our students in our hands. So I may fail sometimes, but as a teacher, and this is something my mom told me at the beginning when I first started my teaching career, that I have to be very careful when I deal with students because their entire future is in my hands. So that is something that I always remember. So sometimes I may forget, but knowing that the responsibility of the responsibility that the students have come to you to learn is huge. So in my own way, or I'm sure that is something that every teacher does, they try their best to not only prepare students to pass the exam, but to prepare themselves to face the world also. So, but unfortunately, we cannot save everybody that we come across. So sometimes we may lose a student on the way, you know.
If you have a guilt complex, where I think you measure yourself by the success or failure of your student, then I think it is a significant indication that you're actually doing your job, don't you think?
Success shouldn't be measured with them, you know, achieving the highest position in the society, but if they are contented or if they are happy with what they are doing and they enjoy doing that, so I think that can be considered to be leading a successful life, and that is what I think would make me most happy as a teacher who has taught students. So
okay, so on that vein, would you also take responsibility as a teacher, or do you think colleges and schools in Nagaland should also take responsibility if the students are not, let's say, they are not big in general affairs, they don't even know the governor of Nagaland? Do you think they should take the responsibility also?
that is something that I haven't really thought about.
Right.
So it may be very rash if I respond. I think the institutions, educational institutions should be concerned about this, and they should try to, this is the trend where it is going, right? So they should consider themselves responsible, if I may add. The upsurge of different coaching institutions where again reading for passing an exam is emphasized. So of course those are also very helpful, but at the same time people seem to, from elementary level, people seem to focus more on coaching and tuitions rather than what they learn in the classroom or in the schools. So I think it can go both ways.
Thank you so much for coming to our show, Aaron. We'll be winding this conversation, but like I said, there will be more opportunities to talk together in the future too. Dr. Temsurenla Ozukum of ICFAI, ladies and gentlemen, besides her interest in literature, she is active in academic discourses through seminars and conferences. To be literate is not the same as being educated. We have talked about how being aware of society through mass media such as newspapers and news TV content or reading books help us interpret people and social behaviors. It teaches us how to navigate through complex human interactions, whether it is in college, relationships, workplace, or even in online interactions or conversing with people, because sometimes the point is not to get a job, but to be successful in how you interact with the world. I'm Ngullie. See you next time.